My mother-in-law called CPS on me so she could take my kids. So, I sent her to the one place where her words mean nothing. After my husband Michael died in that horrific collision on Interstate 6 months ago, his mother Dorothy showed up at my front door in Riverside with a measuring tape and a notebook full of necessary improvements to help me raise my children properly. I'm Hannah, and I thought I knew grief until Dorothy decided to make it her personal mission to prove I was unfit to parent my own babies. The first attack came just 3 weeks after we buried Marcus. I was at Kroger with my 6-year-old daughter Emma, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy in our shattered world. We were in the cereal aisle when Dorothy appeared like a storm cloud, grabbing Emma's small hand before I could even register what was happening. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the other shoppers, her voice carrying across the entire aisle, "this woman is so consumed by grief she can't even feed these precious children properly." She yanked out her iPhone and started photographing my cart like she was documenting a crime scene. "Look at this, nothing but processed garbage. Pop-Tarts, frozen pizza, instant mac and cheese. These babies are practically starving." Emma burst into tears, confused and terrified by her grandmother's sudden transformation from the woman who had held her during Daddy's funeral service. Dorothy knelt down, stroking Emma's hair with false sweetness. "Don't you worry, sweetheart. Grandma Dorothy is going to make sure you get real home-cooked meals very soon. Pot roast and mashed potatoes, just like your daddy used to love." The Kroger security guard had to escort her out while she screamed about calling her attorney, threatening to document my obvious neglect and emotional instability. Other customers stared as I tried to comfort my sobbing daughter, whispering apologies into her hair while my own hands shook with rage and humiliation. That night, Emma crawled into my bed, her little body trembling. "Mommy, why was Grandma Dorothy so mean? Why did she say those things?" I held her close, promising that Grandma was just sad about Daddy too, but inside, something cold and protective was awakening in my chest. I should have known this was just the beginning. Dorothy had tasted blood in the water, and she was circling like a shark. The woman who had sobbed alongside me at Michael's graveside, who had promised to help me through the darkest time of my life, was now systematically planning to destroy what little stability my children had left. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Rodriguez from Lincoln Elementary, Emma's school. "Mrs. Thompson, we need to talk. There's been an incident involving your mother-in-law." My blood turned to ice water as she explained that Dorothy had somehow convinced the front office secretary that she had permission to observe Emma's second-grade class. The trap was being set, and I didn't even know it yet. By the time I screeched into Lincoln Elementary's parking lot, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel of my Honda Civic, Dorothy had already vanished like smoke. But the damage was done. Principal Anderson met me in the hallway outside Emma's classroom, his expression grave. "Mrs. Thompson, I need you to understand that we take any concerns about student welfare very seriously." My stomach plummeted. "What exactly did she tell you?" "Your mother-in-law expressed concerns about what she called episodes you've been having since your husband's passing. She suggested we should document any changes in Emma's behavior or appearance that might indicate problems at home." He handed me a business card with elegant gold lettering. "She also left this, said it was her attorney's information, just in case we needed to make any reports." The hallway seemed to tilt around me. Dorothy had weaponized my grief, twisted my natural mourning process into evidence of unfitness. Every tear I'd shed, every moment of exhaustion, every time I'd struggled to put one foot in front of the other, she was painting it all as proof that I couldn't care for Michael's children. "Principal Anderson, I need you to understand something," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I am grieving my husband, yes. But I have never, not once, put my children in danger or neglected their needs. Dorothy has no legal right to observe classes or make suggestions about my family." He nodded slowly, but I could see the seed of doubt she'd planted. "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. We're just being cautious." That evening, I sat Emma and her 8-year-old brother Jake down for ice cream sundaes at our kitchen table, the same table where Michael used to help them with homework, where we'd shared thousands of family dinners. The yellow walls still held his presence, his coffee mug still sat in the cabinet, and his children still looked for him every time the front door opened. "Kids, I need to ask you something important," I began, spooning hot fudge over vanilla ice cream. "Has Grandma Dorothy ever asked you questions about how Mommy takes care of you?" Jake, always the more observant one, nodded immediately. "She called me yesterday when I was at Tommy's house. She asked if you cry a lot and if we eat dinner every night. Emma chimed in, chocolate sauce on her chin. She wanted to know if our house is messy and if you forget to give us baths. The ice cream turned to ash in my mouth. Dorothy was interrogating my children, gathering ammunition for whatever legal battle she was planning. She was using their innocence against me, making them unwitting witnesses for her case. That night, after tucking the kids into bed with extra hugs and their favorite stories, I called my sister Rachel in Atlanta. She's building a case, I whispered into the phone, pacing my living room like a caged animal. She's documenting everything, twisting everything. I think she's going to try to take them. Hannah, that's insane. You're an amazing mother. No court would. Rachel, she has money. She has that fancy lawyer's card. And I'm just a widowed mom working part-time at the community center, trying to hold everything together with duct tape and prayers. I collapsed onto Michael's side of the couch, breathing in the fading scent of his cologne on the cushions. What if she wins? What if I lose them too? But I had no idea that Dorothy's next move would make everything else look like child's play. The knock came on a Tuesday morning in October, sharp and official against my front door. I was still in my flannel pajamas, making scrambled eggs and toast for the kids before school, assuming it was just the FedEx driver with another sympathy package from Michael's coworkers. But when I opened the door, two people in dark business suits stood on my porch with clipboards and expressions that made my blood freeze. Mrs. Thompson? The woman spoke first, her voice professional but not unkind. I'm Sandra Mitchell from Child Protective Services, and this is my colleague David Chun. We've received some concerning allegations regarding the welfare of your children. The world tilted sideways. Behind me, I could hear Emma giggling at something Jake had said, the sound of their normalcy suddenly precious and fragile. I'm sorry, what? May we come in? We need to conduct a home inspection and speak with you about some reports we've received. Sandra's eyes were already scanning past me into the house, taking inventory. My hands trembled as I stepped aside, my mind racing. Dorothy. It had to be Dorothy. She'd actually done it. She'd called Child Protective Services and accused me of, what exactly? The allegations include concerns about neglect, improper supervision, and questions about your mental state following your husband's recent death, David explained as they entered my living room, their shoes clicking against the hardwood floors Michael had installed himself 3 summers ago. The caller provided very detailed information and expressed serious concerns about the children's well-being. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her purple unicorn pajamas, her hair messy from sleep. When she saw the strangers, she immediately ran to me, wrapping her small arms around my waist. Mommy, who are these people? Just some visitors, sweetheart. Why don't you go finish your breakfast with Jake? But Sandra was already kneeling down to Emma's level. Hi there, what's your name? Emma, my daughter whispered, pressing closer to me. That's a pretty name. Are you getting ready for school? I watched in horror as these strangers began their assessment of my home, my life, my fitness as a mother. They opened my refrigerator, photographed the contents. They checked the kids' bedrooms, looking for signs of neglect or abuse. They examined our medicine cabinet, our cleaning supplies, our smoke detectors. Jake appeared, confused and frightened by the invasion. Mom, what's happening? Are we in trouble? The question broke my heart. These were the same children who'd already lost their father, who'd already been through more trauma than any kid should face, and now they were being subjected to this nightmare because of Dorothy's manipulation. No, baby, you're not in trouble. These people just need to make sure our house is safe. But I could see the fear in their eyes, the same look they'd had at Michael's funeral when they realized Daddy wasn't coming home. The CPS workers continued their methodical examination, taking notes, asking questions, treating my family like a case file instead of people who were already broken and trying to heal. After an hour that felt like a lifetime, Sandra closed her notebook. Mrs. Thompson, we found no immediate evidence of neglect or unsafe conditions. However, given the detailed nature of the complaints, we'll need to schedule follow-up visits. As they left, David mentioned almost casually, the person who called was very persistent and provided extensive documentation. They seemed quite familiar with your daily routines. That night, after the kids finally fell asleep, both of them in my bed because they were too scared to be alone, I sat in my kitchen and wept. Not the gentle tears of grief I'd grown accustomed to, but the furious, protective rage of a mother whose cubs were being threatened. Dorothy had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She'd terrorized my children, invaded our home, and weaponized the very system meant to protect kids against us. But she'd also made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how far a mother will go to protect her babies. The next morning, I was on the phone with Secure Home Systems before the kids even woke up. "I need a comprehensive security package installed today," I told the representative, my voice steady with new resolve. "Cameras on every entrance, motion sensors, the works." By afternoon, my house looked like Fort Knox. Cameras pointed at the front door, back door, and most importantly, both kids' bedrooms and my home office where I kept all our important documents. If Dorothy wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I had evidence of every move she made. That evening, I made the call that would either save my family or destroy us completely. "Dorothy," I said when she answered, forcing my voice to sound shaky and vulnerable. "Oh my God, I'm so glad you picked up. Something terrible happened today." "Hannah, what's wrong?" Her voice was perfectly calibrated, concerned but not surprised. The performance of a caring grandmother who definitely hadn't orchestrated the whole thing. "Child Protective Services came to the house. They said someone called in complaints about me, about how I'm raising the kids." I let real tears come into my voice. It wasn't hard. "I'm so scared, Dorothy. What if they take Emma and Jake away? I can't lose them too." There was just a beat of silence before she responded. "Oh honey, that's awful. Who would do such a thing?" The fake shock in her voice made my skin crawl. "Listen, why don't you let me take the kids for a while? Just until this all blows over. They could stay at my place in Buckhead, you know how much space I have." "No, I can't. They're all I have left of Michael. I need them with me." "Hannah, be reasonable. If CPS is involved, you need to think about what's best for the children, not what makes you feel better." Her mask was slipping slightly, revealing the manipulative woman underneath. Michael would want them safe and stable. The mention of my dead husband's name in service of her scheme made rage bloom hot in my chest, but I kept my voice broken and defeated. I need some time to think. The kids are so scared after today. Maybe I'll take them to see that new Disney movie at Cumberland Mall on Saturday, try to give them something normal to hold on to." "That sounds like a good idea," Dorothy said, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. Sometimes a little normalcy is exactly what children need during difficult times. After I hung up, I sat in my living room surrounded by the blinking lights of my new security system and planned Dorothy's downfall. I knew she still had the spare key Michael had given her years ago, the one for emergencies that I'd never bothered to ask for back. I knew she'd been gathering information about our routines, our schedule, our vulnerable moments. Most importantly, I knew that a woman desperate enough to call CPS with false allegations wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity of an empty house and unsupervised access to my children's belongings. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, perfect weather for what I had in mind. I bundled Emma and Jake into my Honda Civic, their excitement about the movie genuine and heartwarming. They had no idea they were unwitting players in a trap that would determine their future. "Mommy, can we get popcorn?" Emma asked as we drove toward the theater. "And those gummy bears?" Jake added hopefully. "All the candy you want," I promised, checking my phone to make sure the security app was working perfectly. "Today's going to be a very special day." 20 minutes into the movie, right when the animated princess was discovering her magical powers, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app with trembling fingers and watched as Dorothy's silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. She was really going to do it. She was actually going to break into my house. "Kids, I need to step out for just a minute," I whispered, my heart pounding. "Keep watching the movie." In the theater lobby, I watched on my phone screen as Dorothy used her spare key to enter my front door. She moved through my house with the confidence of someone who believed she was saving the day, heading straight for the kids' bedrooms. The camera in Emma's room showed her pulling out folding suitcases and methodically packing my daughter's clothes. The purple unicorn pajamas, the little sundresses Michael had picked out, the tiny shoes that still smelled like playground mulch. In Jake's room, she took his favorite stuffed elephant, the one he'd slept with every night since his father died. But the most damning footage came from my home office, where she rifled through my filing cabinet with surgical precision. Birth certificates, passports, social security cards, medical records, everything she'd need to claim legal guardianship of my children. My hands shook as I dialed 911. "Someone has broken into my house," I whispered into the phone. "They're stealing my children's belongings and important documents." Dorothy was carrying the second suitcase toward her car when the police cruiser pulled up, its red and blue lights painting my neighborhood in colors of justice. "Ma'am, what are you doing here?" Officer Rodriguez asked as he approached Dorothy, who was frozen like a deer in headlights beside her silver Lexus, suitcases full of my children's belongings at her feet. The color drained from Dorothy's face, then flooded back in a rush of crimson rage. "I'm their grandmother," she sputtered, gesturing wildly at the house. "I have every right to be here. Their mother is completely unstable, she can't take care of them properly. Michael would want them with me." Officer Rodriguez's partner, Officer Kim, was examining the suitcases Dorothy had been loading into her car. "Ma'am, these appear to be children's clothing and personal documents. Do you have permission to remove these items from this residence?" "Permission?" Dorothy's voice rose to a shriek. "I don't need permission to save my grandchildren from neglect. That woman is having mental episodes, she can barely function, and those babies are suffering because of her selfishness." I pulled up just as Officer Rodriguez was reaching for his handcuffs, Jake and Emma's eyes wide with confusion as they watched their grandmother being arrested in our driveway. "Stay in the car, babies," I told them gently. "I'll be right back." "Mrs. Thompson?" Officer Kim approached me with a clipboard. "We understand this is your residence and these are your children's belongings?" "Yes, officer. I have security footage showing her entering my home without permission and taking these items." I showed him my phone screen, where the crystal-clear video displayed Dorothy's methodical theft. Dorothy saw me approaching and her composure shattered completely. "Hannah, thank God you're here. I was trying to help, I was saving them. You're going to ruin their lives just like you ruined Marcus's." The accusation hit like a physical blow, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Dorothy, Michael died in a car accident. I had nothing to do with that, and you know it. You distracted him. You made him worry about money, about the future. If he hadn't been stressed about providing for your little fantasy life, he would have been paying attention to the road." Officer Rodriguez stepped between us. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. You're under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted theft, and unlawful removal of legal documents." As they placed Dorothy in handcuffs, she continued her tirade. "You don't understand. I'm trying to save those children. She's not fit to be their mother. Michael would be ashamed of what she's become." The neighbors had come out to watch the spectacle, Mrs. Patterson from next door, the Johnson family from across the street, old Mr. Kowalski who always waved when we drove by. I felt a flush of embarrassment but pushed it aside. This wasn't about appearances anymore. This was about survival. "Mommy, why is Grandma Dorothy in trouble?" Emma asked as I returned to the car, her small face pressed against the window. "Because she took things that didn't belong to her, sweetheart. But it's going to be okay now." Jake, always more perceptive, watched as the police car pulled away with his grandmother in the back seat. "Is she going to jail?" "Yes, baby. She is." That night, after endless phone calls with lawyers and police detectives, after reassuring my terrified children that they were safe, after documenting every camera angle and timestamp, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. Dorothy had actually tried to kidnap my children's entire lives, their clothes, their documents, their legal identities. She'd been planning to take them, probably file for emergency custody based on her false CPS reports, and present herself as their savior from an unfit mother. But instead of destroying my family, she destroyed herself. And she was about to discover that the justice system she tried to weaponize against me had very clear rules about grandparents who break into homes and steal children's belongings. The woman who'd held my hand at Michael's funeral was about to learn that some lines, once crossed, lead to consequences she never saw coming. Dorothy sat in that holding cell for 3 months before her trial because, as it turned out, not a single person in her life was willing to post her bail. Not her bridge club friends, not her country club associates, not even her own sister from Savannah. I guess that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of person she really was. When the trial finally began in January, Dorothy showed up to court like she was attending a charity gala, designer suit, perfect makeup, her silver hair styled in an elegant chignon. She'd convinced herself that this was all a misunderstanding, that once the judge heard her side, everyone would see she was the real victim. I sat in the front row with my attorney, Linda Washington, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family law and had no patience for Dorothy's games. "She's going to try to paint you as an unfit mother," Linda had warned me. "Be prepared for her to air every private moment of your grief." The prosecution, led by District Attorney James Mitchell, opened with the security footage. The entire courtroom watched in silence as Dorothy used her key to enter my home, systematically packed my children's belongings, and stole their legal documents. There was no denying what everyone could see with their own eyes. But Dorothy's lawyer, a young public defender named Kevin Hart who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, tried to frame it as a grandmother's desperate attempt to save neglected children. When Dorothy took the stand, the performance began immediately. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "Your Honor, I was only trying to protect my son's children," she sobbed, mascara beginning to streak down her cheeks. "After Michael died, Hannah completely fell apart. She stopped cooking real meals, stopped maintaining the house properly, stopped being a real mother to those precious babies." "Ma'am," D.A. Mitchell interrupted, "did you have legal permission to enter Mrs. Thompson's home and remove her children's belongings?" "I was saving them." Dorothy's voice rose to a wail. "Michael would have wanted them raised properly, not by a woman who feeds them nothing but frozen dinners and lets them run wild." "That's not what I asked. Did you have permission to take those items?" Dorothy's composure cracked further. "She's ruining their lives. She's selfish and unstable, and those children deserve better. Michael worked so hard to provide for them, and she's throwing it all away with her self-pity and laziness." Judge Patricia Morrison, a stern woman with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, had heard enough. "Mrs. Blackwood, please answer the question. Did you have permission to enter that home and remove those items?" I had to protect them," Dorothy whispered, finally deflated. The prosecution presented evidence of Dorothy's false CPS report, her harassment at the grocery store, her infiltration of Emma's school. They showed how she'd systematically tried to build a case for my unfitness, while planning to abscond with my children's legal documents. When I took the stand, I spoke directly to the judge about my grief, my struggles, and my absolute dedication to my children's well-being. "Your Honor, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes while learning to be a single parent. But I have never, not once, put my children in danger or failed to meet their needs." Dorothy tried to use my natural grief against me, but grieving my husband doesn't make me an unfit mother. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict: guilty on all charges, breaking and entering, attempted kidnapping, theft of legal documents, and filing false reports with Child Protective Services. Dorothy's scream echoed through the courtroom as Judge Morrison announced the sentence: 15 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 7 years. "But I was saving them," Dorothy wailed as the bailiff approached with handcuffs. "She's going to ruin their lives. Michael would be ashamed." Judge Morrison's voice cut through her hysteria like a blade. "Mrs. Blackwood, you terrorized a grieving family, made false accusations to government agencies, and attempted to kidnap children by stealing their legal documents. Your actions were calculated, cruel, and inexcusable." As they led Dorothy away, still sobbing and protesting her innocence, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Michael died: peace. My children were safe. Our family was protected. The woman who tried to destroy us had destroyed only herself. 2 months after the trial, the first letter arrived. I recognized Dorothy's elegant handwriting immediately on the cream-colored envelope, the same handwriting that used to grace birthday cards and Christmas gifts back when she was just Michael's mother instead of my enemy. "Dear Hannah," it began, "I know you must be angry with me, but I hope you can find it in your heart to understand that everything I did came from love for Michael's children." I didn't finish reading it. I took a red marker from Emma's art supplies and wrote "Return to Sender" across the front in bold letters, then dropped it back in the mailbox. But Dorothy was persistent. The letters kept coming, one every 2 weeks like clockwork, each one more desperate than the last. "Please, Hannah, just one photo of Emma and Jake. I'm their grandmother. I miss them so much. I made mistakes, but I was only trying to help. Can't we find a way to move forward for the children's sake? The other inmates here have pictures of their grandchildren. Please don't punish me by keeping them from me." Every single letter got the same treatment, a red return stamp and a trip back to the postal service. I wouldn't give Dorothy even the smallest window back into our lives. Emma and Jake adjusted better than I'd expected. Emma stopped having nightmares about strangers taking her away. Jake's teacher reported that his grades had improved and he seemed more relaxed in class. Without Dorothy's constant interference and criticism hovering over our family like a storm cloud, we finally had space to heal. I kept the house exactly as it was, Michael's coffee mug in the cabinet, his favorite chair in the living room, his pictures throughout the house. But now when the kids talked about Daddy, it was with warm memories instead of the confused pain that Dorothy's presence had amplified. "Mommy," Emma said one evening as I tucked her into bed, "I'm glad Grandma Dorothy isn't coming over anymore." "Why's that, sweetheart?" "Because when she was here, you were always worried and sad. Now you smile more." Out of the mouths of babes. My 6-year-old had noticed what I'd been too stressed to see. Dorothy's campaign against our family hadn't just threatened our future, it had stolen our present. On the 1-year anniversary of Michael's death, I took the kids to visit his grave. We brought fresh flowers, sunflowers his favorite, and told him about school, about their friends, about the small victories and everyday joys that make up a life. "Daddy," Jake said, placing his small hand on the headstone, "we're doing okay. Mom takes good care of us." As we walked back to the car, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Do you think Daddy knows that Grandma Dorothy was being mean to us?" I squeezed her hand gently. "I think Daddy knows that we're safe and loved, and that's all that matters to him." That night, another letter from Dorothy arrived. Instead of my usual routine, I opened it and read the first few lines. "Hannah, I've been thinking about what I did wrong, and I realize now that I let my grief over losing Michael clouded my judgment. I was so afraid of losing any connection to him that I tried to take his children away from the person he loved most." For a moment, I almost felt something like pity for her. Almost. Then I remembered my children's tears when CPS walked through our home. I remembered Emma clinging to my leg, terrified that strangers were going to take her away. I remembered Jake asking if they were in trouble, if they'd done something wrong. I took out my red marker and stamped "returned" across the envelope with extra force. Dorothy made her choice when she decided to weaponize the system against a grieving family. She chose to terrorize children who'd already lost their father. She chose to prioritize her own desires over everyone else's well-being. Now she gets to live with the consequences of those choices in a place where her words, her manipulation, and her sense of entitlement mean absolutely nothing. My children are safe, our family is healing, and Dorothy Blackwood is exactly where she belongs, somewhere her toxic influence can never reach the people Michael loved most. Sometimes the best protection you can give your family is making sure the people who want to harm them face the full weight of justice. And sometimes that means sending them to the one place where their words truly mean nothing at all.